What happened still feels like a shot I didn't see coming. I've been hit by enough incoming rounds to know the sound of danger, but this was different. New Year's Eve, downtown rooftop bar. Strings of golden lights, champagne towers sweating in the cold, everyone drunk on the idea that the new year means you get to rewrite the old one. I was in my dress blues. Shoes mirror bright. Medals neat. My squad jokes I look like a recruiting poster when I wear them, but that night I wanted it that way. 6 months deployed, dust still in my lungs, grease still in my nails, and all I could think was that I finally had something normal to hold on to. Care. We'd been together 2.5 years. She sent care packages with jerky and socks, wrote letters in handwriting that slanted like it was leaning on me. I convinced myself she was the anchor. I'd carried a 240 across deserts, swapped barrels in firefights, lived off 3 hours of sleep, but her voice in late-night calls was the only thing that made me believe life had a soft edge somewhere. So yeah, I bought the ring. I didn't do it lightly. A Marine doesn't throw his money or his heart just anywhere. I planned it. Rooftop countdown, skyline fireworks, all her friends and family there because I thought she'd want them to see her yes. Instead, they saw my humiliation. I dropped to one knee. The ring box clicked open in my palm like the chamber of a weapon locking. I didn't even get the words out before she laughed. Not nervous, not shocked, laughed. A hand to her mouth, eyes wide like she'd just watched a comedy skit. "Mason," she said loud enough for the whole rooftop and the half-dozen iPhones pointed our way. "Come on. We're not that serious." Laughter from her friends rippled out. Her best friend, Liv, raised her phone higher, recording like she was Spielberg catching the final scene. Someone in the crowd actually clapped, like humiliation was a performance worth applause. I froze there, kneeling, box in hand, while my ears rang like I'd just taken a blast. For a second, I swear I wanted to salute just to have something to do with my arms. Instead, I shut the box, stood, and heard the sound of fabric straining as I straightened. My blues didn't feel like honor anymore. They felt like costume. "Wait, you thought I'd say yes?" Kara tilted her head, still smiling. "Mason, you're amazing really, but you were comfort. You were safe. You were here until I figured things out." Whispers spread. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another, "That's brutal." A stranger's laugh stabbed through the silence. And then it hit me, she knew. This wasn't shock. This was theater. She'd planned her lines. Practiced them. Delivered them in front of an audience. Phones were out everywhere. I saw my own face on a screen, wide-eyed, humiliated, turned into content before I could even process it. I walked. Took the stairs instead of the elevator because I needed movement, needed the pounding of my boots on concrete to drown out the roar in my head. On the landing, I caught my reflection in the glass. High and tight cut, jaw locked, blues still perfect. Outwardly a Marine. Inside, empty. On the street, a car slowed, window rolled down. A guy shouted, "Aura," and then like a knife twist, "Sorry about your girl, bro." The laughter from inside the car trailed off as it sped away. By the time I got back to base, the clip had already hit TikTok. Liv had captioned it, "When your situationship thinks it's serious." Millions of views by morning. Comments dissecting my face, my uniform, the way I stood. I wasn't a man anymore. I was a meme. And here's the part that crushed me. I wasn't just rejected. I was targeted. This wasn't a bad moment. It was a setup. I'd been ambushed before, but at least then the enemy wore a uniform. If humiliation is a wound, going viral is salt poured into it. I didn't even get 24 hours to bleed in private before the world decided my pain was entertainment. By the time I woke up the next morning, the rooftop clip had been ripped, stitched, duet, slowed down, sped up, and turned into reaction content. Memes with captions like, "Marine takes an L on New Year's Eve," and "Protect the troops?" Not her. Flooded my feed. There was even one edited with sound effects. My knee hitting the floor synced to the Call of Duty revive noise. I threw my phone across the barracks room. It hit the wall, battery cover popping loose like even it wanted to abandon me. But smashing the phone doesn't smash the internet. By noon the clip was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. My humiliation trending like it had a hashtag I never asked for. The squad saw it. Of course they did. Marines are vicious when it comes to teasing. It's how we survive. But this was different. Some tried sympathy. Some used humor to cover the discomfort. Corporal Dana walked into the chow hall holding a tray and said, "Gunny, at least she didn't wait until you were mid-bite of Emery Chili Mac." Lance Corporal Ruiz chimed in, "Yeah, imagine being rejected with heartburn. That's a war crime." The table laughed, but the laughter had a weird edge. Pity mixed with mockery. I forced a smile, but my insides were chewing glass. Later, Ruiz caught me in the hallway more serious. "Gunny, you good?" I wanted to say yes. That's the default. Marine's answer to everything. Good to go. But I just nodded and kept walking because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. By that evening, the comments had turned crueler. Not just jokes. Attacks. Bro should have known she was out of his league. Imagine serving your country and still not being enough. Dress blues can't hide desperation. Then came the stolen valor accusations. Some account called Stolen Valor Patrol posted a zoom-in of my chest, circling one of my ribbons in red with the caption, "Looks SU. Any Marines want to verify this guy?" That one hit like a body blow. As if the humiliation wasn't enough, now the internet was questioning whether I'd even earned what I bled for. The DMs poured in. Randoms calling me a fraud, others saying I deserved it for being military, as if service was some character flaw. And in the middle of the chaos, one message cut through. "She told us you'd propose." We knew. I froze, reread it 3 times. It was from a burner account, no profile pic, nothing traceable. But the words buzzed in my skull. She knew. I had suspected, but seeing it in text, it felt like confirmation. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my rack staring at the ceiling, ring box on the dresser like an unexploded grenade. Every time I closed my eyes I saw her laughing. Not nervous, not shocked. Laughing because she'd been waiting for that moment. Waiting to get me in front of a crowd. By 0300 I laced up my boots and went for a run. Cold air burned my lungs, my breath clouds trailing behind like ghosts. I pushed until my legs shook, until my chest felt hollow. I wanted exhaustion to replace the pain. It didn't. It just sat there heavier than my ruck. The next morning I walked into the motor pool and heard whispers stop mid-sentence. One private muttered, "That's him." Like I was Bigfoot caught on camera. I've been a Marine for over a decade. I've led men through live fire, I've hauled brothers out of kill zones. And here I was reduced to that guy from TikTok. That night, Ruiz slid a coffee across the table to me. "My aunt saw the clip," he said. "She said anyone who laughs at a man giving his heart was never serious about herself." It was a small kindness. It almost broke me. I tried to laugh it off, but Ruiz shook his head. "For what it's worth, Gunny, she's out of range for our respect." That's all I got. Out of range. Marines use that phrase when a target isn't worth ammo. I repeated it in my head all night. Out of range. Maybe Kara wasn't worth the shot. But the internet wasn't done. By day 3 the clip had been turned into challenges. People kneeling in public places and having friends laugh in their faces. Hashtag not that serious. Everywhere I looked, my failure was being reenacted for fun. The Corps noticed. Captain V pulled me into his office. His face was neutral, but his eyes said he'd seen it all. "Marine," he said, "remember our social media policy. Do not engage. Do not respond. Head down, do your work." Understood. "Yes, sir." "Good," he said. Then, softer, almost human, "You've taken worse hits. You'll walk this one off too." I nodded, saluted, walked out. But his words didn't land. Because firefights, ambushes, explosions, those make sense. This was friendly fire from the one person I thought had my 6. The next day Jared called. An EMT I'd played ball with, mutual friend level. His voice was hesitant. "Mason, I don't know how to say this, but she knew." My stomach dropped. "Kara?" "Yeah. Weeks. Liv told people about it. They had a group chat. Kara said she wanted to make it clear you weren't serious. Said Elliot would see it. Said it'd be a perfect way to go viral." Elliot? Her ex. The name was an old bruise. I'd seen his face in photos on her fridge once, brushed it off as history. Apparently not. Jared's voice cracked. "Man, I thought you should know. This wasn't rejection. It was sabotage." I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the ring box on my dresser. The diamond glinted back at me, mocking. A Marine expects ambushes in the field. Not at home. Not from the one you thought you were fighting for. You ever felt the exact second when anger replaces heartbreak? Like a switch flips and suddenly grief has teeth? That was me after Jared's call. Her ex Elliot. The name I'd shrugged off like some college relic turned out to be the headline of my humiliation. Kara hadn't just rejected me, she staged it for him. For his eyes. I was the clown in her circus, kneeling in dress blues while she auditioned for another man's attention. It all made sense in an ugly kind of way. The way she'd been on her phone more often, turning it face down when I walked into the room. The sudden gym obsession, the new perfume, the way she started saying things like, "I just want to feel free, you know?" I chalked it up to stress. I was halfway across the world most of the time, she was lonely, blah blah blah. Turns out she was just rehearsing her escape. But the part that burned hottest wasn't that she wanted out. People fall out of love all the time. I could have lived with that. What I couldn't live with was the performance. The planning. The way she weaponized my sincerity. I called Jared back later that night. "You sure about this?" "Positive," he said. "Liv's been bragging about having receipts. She won't show anyone yet, claims she's protecting Kara, but she said it was all scripted." Receipts. Screenshots. Group chat logs. Draft captions for the video. He paused. "I'm telling you, Mason. They were laughing about it before you even got down on your knee." I clenched the phone so hard it creaked. My free hand found the scar along my forearm, the one I got from shrapnel in Helmand. Funny. I'd taken that hit without flinching. But this cut deeper. That night I didn't drink. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I sat on my rack staring at the ring box, replaying every moment of the rooftop with new clarity. Her smirk wasn't shock, it was triumph. Liv's camera wasn't opportunistic, it was choreography. And me? I was the idiot who supplied the prop. I thought about messaging Kara, demanding answers. But then I pictured her, glass of wine in hand, reading my words out loud to Elliot like it was entertainment. No, I wasn't giving her another performance. 2 days later, the video mutated again. Now people were overlaying her laugh on random clips. A guy dropping his pizza? Kara's laugh. Someone wiping out on a skateboard? Kara's laugh. It became a sound effect. A punchline. And in the middle of it, my face. Always my face. I kept my head down at work, but the silence was loud. Every Marine who looked at me had seen it. Some didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. Others made awkward jokes that didn't land. The worst were the pity stares. I'd rather take fire than pity. One evening, while checking gear in the motor pool, I snapped. Dana cracked a joke. Nothing cruel, just a dumb comment about me being TikTok famous. I slammed the wrench down so hard it echoed. "Enough," I barked. The whole bay went silent. Eyes on me. My chest heaving. For a second, I thought I might actually swing on someone just to bleed the rage out. That's when Staff Sergeant Eves appeared. He didn't yell. Didn't pull rank. Just leaned against a Humvee and waited until the others drifted away. "You're carrying it wrong," he said finally. "Carrying what?" I muttered. "The hit. You've taken worse. You know better than to stand in the open with no cover." I rubbed my face trying to steady my breathing. Eves tilted his head. "Listen, Gunny. We've all been blindsided. Maybe not like this, but we've all had a moment when the ground gave out. The difference is how you return fire. You don't spray and pray. You stack your rounds. You wait. You plan. You choose your target." I looked at him, and for the first time in days something clicked. He was right. I'd been reacting like a raw recruit under fire, panicked, sloppy. But Marines don't panic. Marines adapt. That night I started making lists. Not revenge fantasies. Tactical plans. A mission set. Sell the ring. No shrine to stupidity. Lock down my finances. If Kara was petty enough to humiliate me, what else might she try? Reclaim my body. Train harder, longer, sharper. Not for her. For me. Build something outside the core. Something solid. Remember, she is out of range. But even as I wrote it, I couldn't shake Jared's words. Receipts. If proof existed, if I could get my hands on it, then this wouldn't just be my word against hers. It would be the truth, undeniable in black and white. I didn't want to destroy her. Not yet. I just wanted the record straight. But deep down, a darker part of me wanted something else too. To see her world crumble like mine had. To watch her choke on the same humiliation she'd fed me. And I'll be honest, part of me wanted to hear Elliot's name dragged through the mud. Because if he thought he could stand in the shadows while she gutted me on camera, he was in for a rude awakening. The Corps had taught me many things. Patience was one of them. So I waited. I trained. And I planned. Because if Kara thought that Rooftop was the end of my story, she had no idea what kind of Marine she just declared war on. You ever feel like you're walking around with a live grenade in your chest? That was me for weeks. Smiling when I had to, nodding at orders, running through drills. On the outside, Gunnery Sergeant Mason Tate squared away. On the inside, fuse burning down, sparks spitting under the surface. The tipping point came on a Tuesday in the motor pool. The day had started normal enough. Checklists, grease-stained clipboards, guys joking about chow hall food. I was tightening a bolt on a Humvee when Dana, trying to break the silence, smirked and said, "Hey Gunny, any rooftop proposals today?" The laughter from a couple of privates was immediate, sharp, like glass bottles breaking. My hand froze on the wrench. I looked at Dana. He wasn't trying to be cruel, just filling the air with nervous humor. But the sound of those laughs hit me harder than any bullet. The grenade went off. I slammed the wrench down so hard the clang echoed through the bay. Every head turned. Enough, I snapped. My voice carried the kind of edge that cuts before you realize you're bleeding. The room went still. You could have heard a pin drop. Dana's face drained of color and he stammered, "Sorry, Gunny. Just kidding around." "Not funny," I growled. My knuckles were white on the steel. For half a second I wanted to throw the damn wrench across the room, just to feel something break. But then I caught myself. Marines were watching. Young ones. Eyes wide like they were seeing something they'd never seen before. Their Gunny on the verge of losing it. I walked out before I did something I couldn't take back. The cold air slapped me in the face as I leaned against the chain-link fence outside, sucking in breaths like I'd just finished a sprint. That's when I heard boots crunch on gravel. "Gunny," a voice said. Deep, steady. "Staff Sergeant Eves." He didn't yell. Didn't chew me out. He just stood there, arms folded, the way senior NCOs do when they're giving you space to speak first. I didn't. Finally he said, "You're carrying it wrong." I kept my eyes on the horizon. "Carrying what?" "The hit," he said. "You've taken worse. You know better than to stand in the open with no cover." I laughed, bitter. "This isn't a battlefield." Eves tilted his head. "Isn't it? You got ambushed. You got hit. Doesn't matter if it was bullets or betrayal, the principle's the same. You don't spray and pray. You stack your rounds. You wait. You plan. You choose your target." His words slid under my skin. He was right. I'd been flailing, lashing out, letting anger steer me. That's not how Marines fight. We adapt. We outmaneuver. "Gunny," he said softer, "I've been divorced twice. My second wife once told me I was the dress rehearsal for the life she actually wanted. That was the day I learned some people mistake loyalty for a trampoline. They bounce until they find higher ground. Let 'em. You build a ladder." For the first time in weeks I felt something that wasn't rage. It was recognition. A ladder. Not a grenade. I nodded slowly. "So what? Just let it go?" He shrugged. "You don't let it go. You redirect it. You put it into something that makes the hit worth taking. Otherwise you're just bleeding on people who didn't cut you." That night I sat in my room staring at the ring box. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not journal entries, plans. Lists, tactics, missions. Mission set, Ruck and Rebuild. It started small in my head. Sell the ring, use the money to buy rucks, plates, a few headlamps. Get Marines and local kids moving at dawn. Carry weight together. Build something out of the rubble. It wasn't about Kara anymore. It wasn't even about the rooftop. It was about me refusing to be defined by a viral clip. But before I could build, I had to make sure my foundation was solid. And that meant shoring up my defenses. I pulled my credit reports. Locked down my accounts. Set up alerts. If Kara had been cruel enough to orchestrate my humiliation, who's to say she wouldn't try to burn me financially too? I filed it all away neat and clean. For the first time in weeks I felt like I was back in control. But the anger wasn't gone. Not yet. It hummed in my chest like an engine on idle. The next Saturday I strapped on a 40-pound ruck and hit the trail alone before sunrise. Each step pounded out a word in my head. It does not define me. Over and over until the words were muscle memory. By mile 4 sweat was pouring down my back, my calves screaming. And yet, for the first time since the rooftop, I felt something close to peace. That night I made my decision. The grenade was done. The ladder was being built. Kara thought she'd written my ending. She had no idea she'd just set the stage for my beginning. I sold the ring on a Tuesday because Tuesdays feel like days the universe won't notice you making a hard choice. The jeweler had a velvet pad and a voice like a funeral director. "Are you sure?" he asked, holding the diamond with tweezers as if it might hatch. "Positive," I said. In my head it wasn't a ring, it was capital. Ammunition I'd misallocated. I watched numbers blink onto a screen and turn love into logistics. Walking back to my truck I didn't feel lighter. I felt resupplied. Back on base I spread a legal pad and a cheap pen on my desk like a map. Mission Ruck and Rebuild. The name was corny. I kept it anyway. The plan? Take the weight I've been carrying and make it literal. Dawn Hills. Old plates. Cheap rucks. A place where Marines, neighbors and kids who didn't know where to put their anger could sweat in the dark and come out with their lungs burning and their heads quiet. Not therapy. Not a program. Movement with a pulse. Before I could build anything, I needed to plug the holes in the hull. I pulled credit reports, froze accounts, set alerts that would bark if a stranger sneezed near my name. The rooftop taught me humiliation. Adulthood reminded me that humiliation is cheap compared to identity theft. If she'd stage a rejection, what else would she stage? Lock it down, Gunny. Then I went hunting the rumor. Stolen valor had attached to my name like a burr, and even though the Corps knew my record, the sewage of it got under my skin. I messaged the admin of Stolen Valor Patrol, the dude who'd circled my rack in red. From the Marine in your clip. Willing to meet. Off camera. Proof in hand. He answered in 8 minutes. Respect. Coffee? We met in a strip mall cafe that smelled like scorched caramel and hope. The guy was smaller in person, a beanie pulled low as if shame was a draft. I set a folder on the table. DD 214, citations, orders, a letter from a CO who only compliments when people retire or die. He read. The color drained from his face slow as a tide. Internet makes me stupid, he said finally. Internet makes us all stupid, I said. Make it right. That night he posted a retraction. We were wrong. Marine earned every ribbon. It didn't stop the rooftop video from multiplying, but it put out one fire. Sometimes all you need is one less flame. I used the ring money to order rucks and plates, scrolled Craigslist for headlamps, and filled out a permit form at the city parks office where a clerk with pink hair and a nose ring said, Don? You know it's cold, right? That's the point, I said. Metal? She nodded, stamping the form with the authority of a minor god. Try not to die. I built a cheap site with a sign-up link, slapped together a Venmo and texted a handful of Marines. Saturday 0530. Trailhead at Kings Ridge. Bring water, a headlamp, and whatever's chasing you. We'll carry it uphill. I half expected 2 people to show. 17 turned up. 9 Marines, 2 dads with eyes full of weather, 4 high school kids in hoodies like armor, 1 neighbor who opened with, I'm not a group person, and then fell in at the front. We started in the dark. Breath goes. Headlamps bobbing like small planets. I called pace. Easy first mile. Feet under knees. Don't compete yet. By the second hill, jokes loosened. By the third, truths did. No speeches, no circles, just the kind of honesty that slips out when your heart's punching your ribs from the inside. A kid named Tavian said, my mom's on her second job. I don't want my little brother to drift. Corporal Dana, who'd made the ill-timed joke in the motor pool, pulled even with me and said, been drinking too much since she left. I said, hill's long. Save your air. Which translated from Marine to human means, I'm here, keep moving. At the top, we watched the city come awake like a bruise changing color. I poured scorched coffee from a metal thermos into a cup that had survived more barracks drops than any human deserves. Next week, I said. Bring someone who thinks they can't. They did. Word travels weirdly when there's no algorithm telling it where to go. By the 3rd Saturday we had 26. By the 5th, 31. Guys who hadn't made a formation on time since boot were showing up 10 minutes early to stretch in the cold and insult each other's playlists. A retired army sergeant wandered in and announced, I brought my bad knee and my worse attitude. We made room for both. Between Saturdays I trained like I had a test. Not to glow up. To remember that my body was mine. I ran until my breath steadied. I loaded the bar until my hands rattled like old doors. I slept like it was a job. Kara texted once. Can we talk? I swiped left and right like it might reorder the past. It didn't. I archived the thread and went ruck the hill. 2 days later Liv messaged me, I have something you'll want. I stared at the screen long enough for the dots to appear and disappear twice. I told her to meet me in a public place with bright lighting and bad coffee. She came in looking smaller than her account made her, less pose, more person. She sat without ordering and set a USB drive on the table. It was shaped like a little silver key. Cute if you like metaphors. I'm not here to apologize, she said, which is what people say when the apology is trying to kick through their ribs. What are you here to do then? To be a different person than the one who filmed you, she said. She tapped the key. Group chat logs. Draft captions. Voice notes. She knew your timing. Wanted 2 beats of tension before she laughed. Told me to talk over you if you said deployment, because she didn't want the military pity angle. Liv's eyes flicked up to mine and flinched. I watched your face frame by frame to edit the clip. I don't sleep great. And you want what? I asked. Nothing, she said. Just not to be that person anymore. What's the thing I'll hate? I asked. She chewed her cheek. She's pitching a redemption arc cry on camera. Donate ad revenue to a charity that tests well. Wants you in it. Closure. Narrative symmetry. She swallowed. She thinks your forgiveness is content. The air went cold around my ears. Tell her the next time she wants a Marine in her video, she can leave the TV on during a Super Bowl. Liv nodded once, a bird choosing not to fly. I'll email the files but keep the key. I don't want it. I closed my hand around the metal and said, be better. That's the only apology that cashes. After she left, I held the key until the teeth bit my palm. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. Instead, I did what Eves had said, stack your rounds. I created an anonymous Proton mail, attached a selection of files, and queued drafts addressed to 3 outlets that feast on influencer mess and 1 local reporter who still writes like people are real. I didn't hit send. Not that day. There's a time to fire, there's a time to hold. I needed a clean sight picture. Meanwhile, I scheduled a meeting with Jag, not about Kara, about boundaries. If I donate time and gear to a community program, I asked, what does the Corps think? The attorney, a Navy lieutenant with a dry sense of humor, said, the Corps thinks it looks like leadership, Gunny. Just don't slap the eagle, globe and anchor on it without permission, and don't recruit on the trail. She paused, pen hovering. And for what it's worth, what happened to you? There's a reason I don't have social media. On the 8th Saturday, an old man with a faded USMC ball cap showed up, boots polished to a mirror nobody asked for. He rucked the first milestone silent, then said, wife died in July. I didn't know where to put my hands anymore. We gave his hands something to carry. At the top, he cried without noise and I looked out at the city until my eyes stung from the wind. The local paper sent a photographer with a laminated badge that might have been printed at home. No faces, I said. From behind. From far. We're not content. He nodded. The story ran Monday with a shot of headlamps like a necklace over the ridge and a line that misquoted me in a way I liked. We carry each other. Maybe I'd said something like it. Maybe the hill said it through me. That night, Stolen Valor Patrol messaged again. Saw the story. Good on you. Then a second message. For what it's worth, I took down the original zoomed post. My bad. I typed and deleted 3 versions of damn right you're bad, then settled on appreciated. Sometimes restraint isn't mercy, it's marksmanship. On the way back from the gym, a notification lit up my lock screen. Kings Ridge parking permit, renewed. The clerk had handwritten a note across the bottom. Try not to die, again. Made me grin in a way I hadn't in months. Progress is quiet until it isn't. Standing in my dark room, the silver key warm in my pocket, the rucks lined like obedient dogs by the door, I felt the fuse that's been burning in my chest finally sizzle out. Not gone. Contained. Directional. Kara thought the rooftop was the story. Turns out it was just the establishing shot. The first time I realized Kara's empire was crumbling, it wasn't through some grand announcement. It was through silence. Her Instagram went dark. No rooftop cocktails, no perfectly angled gym selfies, no curated smiles with captions like living my best life sparkles. Just nothing. And for someone who treated attention like oxygen, silence was louder than a scream. But the internet doesn't forget. When the first whispers leaked, screenshots of her texts planning my humiliation, a few DMs Liv quietly pushed into the bloodstream, it spread fast. People who'd stitched her video with applause now deleted their posts, or worse, stitched them again with disgust. So it was staged? She laughed at a man in uniform for clout? Nah. This isn't honesty, it's cruelty with a filter. The tide turned. Her brand deal with some skincare company quietly announced they were re-evaluating partnerships. A podcast she'd been crowing about on Twitter suddenly unfollowed her. Even her ex, the mighty Elliot, posted a cryptic status. Toxic people don't change, they just change targets. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. But here's the part nobody warns you about: revenge. When it comes without you lifting a finger, it feels less like triumph and more like watching a building collapse that you already evacuated. You don't cheer, you just nod, knowing gravity was always going to do its job. Still, Kara didn't go quietly. She texted me one night, "We need to talk. You don't know the whole story." The gall. I ignored it. An hour later, another text, "Please. You don't understand how much pressure I was under." Pressure. The same word I'd used in sandstorms and firefights, dragging wounded Marines under cover while mortars chewed the dirt. She was under pressure planning hashtags and camera angles. I archived the thread and went back to filling rucks. But Kara wasn't done. A week later, she showed up at one of the Saturday Ruck and Rebuild meetups. I spotted her before she reached the group, silver jacket, too thin smile, the kind of presence that made silence around her turn heavy. A couple of Marines stiffened. Tavian muttered, "That her?" She walked straight up to me, ignoring the 20 other people, and said, "Mason, please just let me explain." I didn't break stride. "Fall back. You're not part of this unit." "Mason, I made a mistake." "You made a plan?" I cut in, voice sharp. "A mistake is tripping on a route. You rehearsed your lines." Eyes were on us. She hated that. Her cheeks flushed red as whispers rippled through the group. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said flat. "Not here. Not ever." She froze, hand hovering, then dropped it like it weighed 50 pounds. "Please," she whispered, tears pooling. "It's not what you think." I should have felt pity. I didn't. All I felt was the cold, steady recognition that this wasn't my problem anymore. I turned to the group. "Move out. Pace at 850 per mile. Don't let me catch anyone slacking." They fell in. She was left standing at the trailhead, small and alone, camera phones catching what dignity she had left. By Monday the clip was online. Kara crying at dawn, ignored by a ruck line marching uphill without her. The comments were savage. She wanted content? Here's her content. Gunny Tate, redemption arcs. Imagine humiliating a Marine and then begging him back at his own charity. Her attempt at a comeback had become another humiliation, and this time she scripted nothing. Still, I kept waiting for the twist, for her to pull some legal stunt or for Elliot to show up with more games. And then the twist came. Just not the one I expected. It came from the bank. I got a call from legal assistance on base. "Gunny, we've got some irregularities on your file." Define irregular. An LLC registered under your name, opened 3 months ago. Tate Athletics. Online dropshipping, supposedly. Products returned to your address. Waist trainers. Phone cases. Beauty serum. My blood iced. "Check the documents," I said. They did. Someone had used a scan of my old license. And I knew exactly who had access to that. Kara. When she'd helped me scan it for her apartment lease, she must have kept the file. And now my humiliation wasn't just public, it was financial. The fraud hadn't taken off. My credit freeze stopped most of it, but the intent was there. She hadn't just wanted to break my heart. She'd wanted to strip me clean. And in that moment, any shred of pity I might have had evaporated. She wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. And she was about to learn what happens when you turn a Marine into a mission. Legal assistance looped in the bank, the post office, and because of the return scam, the postal inspector's office. Bureaucracy is a slow animal, but once it smells fraud, it lumbers in your direction with purpose. A Navy JAG named Chin oversaw my side. She wore her hair in a bun that could deflect small arms fire and had a way of looking at paperwork like it had personally offended her. "Walk me through everything you did with your ID in the last year," she said. "Apartment lease at Karas. DMV renewal. Gated community pass for base adjacent gym," I said. I scanned the license at her place once. I tasted metal just saying it. Chin circled the word scan like it was the crime. "And the LLC? Never heard of it. Tate Athletics sounds like a punishment." She snorted once. "It is." Then she slid a form across. "I'm filing an identity theft report and fraud freeze extensions. Postal inspector has questions." The inspector was a man built like a mailbox, square and practical, with a last name that sounded like a stamp. He clicked a pen with the gravity of church. "We've got parcels addressed to your business, being refused and returned to sender," he said. "Return address is a UPS store downtown. Boxes were opened and resealed en route. Whoever set this up didn't know what they were doing. Or they knew enough to be dangerous," I said. He shrugged like both could be true. "We pulled internal footage at the UPS store. Person who opened the P.O. box used a temporary card and a printed scan of your license. Face covered. Hoodie. Sunglasses. Cute. Can you get footage?" "Already got it. Face is blurry but there's a tattoo on the hand, crescent with a line through it." He slid over a freeze frame. The ink winked from a knuckle like a bad joke. I'd seen that tattoo once before in a photo on Kara's fridge. Elliot's hand holding a plastic cup, crescent tattoo tapping the rim. Chin wrote the word crescent with a little underline that promised consequences. "We'll loop in local PD," she said. "This isn't just returns. It's identity misuse across state lines if the vendors shipped from out of state. That's teeth." I left the office with a folder under my arm and a feeling I couldn't categorize. Rage, yes. But something else. The slow, horrifying realization that the rooftop humiliation had done me a favor. If she had said yes, if we'd braided our lives legally and logistically, Elliot and Kara would have had keys to more than my apartment. They'd have had permissions, shared accounts, mail with my name on it becoming our name. A target painted on my benefits and credit that would have taken years to scrub off. The rooftop had been a trapdoor. I fell and thought I died. Turns out it dropped me past a worse floor. I called Eves to say it out loud. If she'd accepted the ring, I'd be in debt and divorce court by now. He grunted. Sometimes you thank the knife for aiming where it did. Staff Sergeant, that's a weird prayer. Yeah, he said, but it prays true. That evening, after a class on barrel changes and jam clears, I took Brennan, the quiet private with eyes like he was reading the weather, out to the lot. He'd been off all day, hands fidgeting during demonstration, gaze snagging on shadows. You good, Brennan? He scraped a boot toe. My mom let her boyfriend move back in. He wanted to borrow my login to the bank. I told her no, she said I was being dramatic. He swallowed. Feels like home is always trying to pick my pockets. Then move your pockets, I said. Freeze what you can. Change what you can't. You don't owe anyone your keys. He nodded, jaw flexing. Yes, Gunny. As he left, I realized advice is easier when you're drowning in the same ocean. 2 days later, the twist hardened into proof. Tavian, the kid who rucked with us and stocked boxes at the downtown UPS store part-time, texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Gunny, I think I saw him. Crescent tat hand. Picked up mail from box 412. I called immediately. You sure? Yeah, he said, whispering like the cardboard could hear him. Tall dude, sloppy hoodie, cap low. He signed for a package addressed to Tate Athletics, cracked it open right there, took the contents, then tossed the box. Manager told me to clean it up. Dude left in a dented silver Civic with a bumper sticker that says, "The universe provides." Did you catch the plate? Half, he said. TXP, something something. 71. Sorry. That's more than nothing. Stay out of it now. You didn't see anything else, copy? Copy. I sent the info to Chen and to the inspector. Within 20 minutes I had a reply. We'll pull traffic cams on the block. Good catch. I bought Tavian new Ruck plates the next day and said they were from a grant. He grinned like his face didn't know how yet. In the middle of all this, Liv emailed the full folder. Not just texts and captions, voice notes, screen recordings of Kara rehearsing her rejection lines in the bathroom mirror, a calendar screenshot with "Anyway, clarity moment" circled in digital red, and a spreadsheet titled Future Plans with columns that made my stomach roll. Lease addendum, BH calc, health coverage. Under timeline, a note. If engaged by spring, add to insurance by summer. It was clinical, efficient, evil. I sent the folder to Chin. She replied within minutes, "Do not engage them. We'll handle the fraud. Keep doing whatever normal is for you." Then a second email, human peeking through lawyer. "You were chosen as a mark, not a partner. That isn't love. That's logistics. I'm sorry. The thing about Marines is we have a talent for turning rage into reps." I doubled down on Ruck and Rebuild. The next Saturday, the group swelled like a muscle that finally remembered its job. A retired Army sergeant with a knee brace limped into formation and said, "Heard you carry ghosts up hills." I said, "Only the cooperative ones." Halfway up the ridge, my phone buzzed. I stopped on the shoulder, breath fogging, and opened a text from the postal inspector. Civic located. Driver, Elliot Harrow. We've got him on store camera, plate confirmed. Local PD wants your formal statement. You available 1400? Elliot's last name didn't deserve a place in my head. Got one anyway. I texted copy and slid the phone away. The hill wasn't going to climb itself. After the ruck, I showered, shaved, and put on civvies that made me look like I wasn't there for a fight. At the station, I signed, swore, and told the story again, because healing is repetition with paperwork. Detective Steelhair, her actual name was Ramos but the nickname stuck in my brain, walked me through the case like a careful hike. We'll likely get him on misdemeanor fraud unless we can show bigger intent. The LLC, the mailbox, the packages, that's a chain. If we find bank accounts, the chain strengthens. What about Kara? I asked. It came out steadier than I felt. Ramos laced her fingers. We have her on planning the humiliation. That's not a crime. We don't have her on the LLC. Yet. But we have digital footprints connecting her devices to the initial email for Tate Athletics. IP lookup from her apartment complex. That's interesting. I stared at the floor tile until it stopped moving. So the rooftop saved me. She nodded once. Sometimes pain is a detour, not a destination. On the way to my truck, a dented silver Civic rolled past and slowed 2 spaces down like a vulture in a nice shirt. Elliot stepped out in that sloppy hoodie, cap brim low, crescent tattoo winking like it had a joke to tell. He leaned back on the hood as if cars were chairs. Man to man, he said, palms up. Let's talk. I looked at his hands. Soft. Never carried a barrel too hot to hold. Never lifted a friend by his harness and dragged him toward cover. I looked at his eyes. Shallow water pretending to be depth. No, I said. We can fix this, he said, smile thinning. We do a video. Tell the truth together. Split the monetization. People love closure. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so obscene. Closure for you is a hashtag, I said. Closure for me is silence. He shrugged like he'd expected the line and practiced his reaction. You think you're better than all this, Marine? You're just content with a uniform. I stepped close enough that he could smell the soap I used. Calm is a weapon when someone expects rage. Walk away, I said. Next time we see each other, there will be more people in the room and they will not be fans. His jaw worked around words he didn't choose. He got in the Civic. The bumper sticker smiled at me. The universe provides. I thought, sometimes it provides subpoenas. I didn't tell the guys about the parking lot. Didn't need the drama. What I did tell them was this: protect your names. Freeze your credit. Don't hand keys to people who compliment your locks. That night, I sat with the folder again and saw something I'd missed. A draft email Kara wrote to her brand manager, subject line Veterans Partnership Idea, proposing a healing series with a charity I recognized for all the wrong reasons. It had been flagged last year for funneling donations into administrative fees. She'd planned to wash the rooftop in righteousness and clean her hands with a fraudulent towel. The cliché would be for me to blow it all up in one glorious post. The twist was that I didn't. I compiled. I cross-referenced. I wrote a clean timeline with attachments. I sent it at 0700 Sunday to 3 outlets that love influencer autopsies and one old-school reporter who still called me Mr. Tate even after I told him not to. I CC'd Ramos and Chin. Then I put the phone face down, laced my boots and drove to the ridge. The hill was wet from a night rain. We climbed anyway. Brennan kept pace, new shoes finding purchase, jaw unclenched. The retired sergeant told a joke about MREs that probably predates time. Tavian asked if carrying 2 plates made you stronger or just dumber. Yes, I said. At the top, the city exhaled its fog like it had been holding something ugly in its chest and finally coughed. I sipped bad coffee from the ugly cup and felt the map inside me redraw again. The rooftop wasn't the center anymore. The fraud wasn't either. The center was this: a group of people who decided the we and we carry weight could matter more than any one person's knife. If there's a moral, God, I hate morals, it's this: sometimes your enemy gives you a gift with a blade in it. You bleed taking it out. Then you realize it cut a tether you didn't know was strangling you. I checked my phone on the way down. 3 new emails. One said we'd like to run the story. On the record or off. Another from Ramos. Nice package. Moving. And one from Chin. Proud of your discipline. That's leadership. Kara thought she'd made me into content. She did. Just not the content she gets to collect. When I finally pulled the trigger on exposing Kara, it wasn't with fireworks. It was with precision. A Marine doesn't go loud until the field is shaped, and I'd been stacking rounds for weeks. The Sunday I sent those files out, texts, captions, draft posts, voice notes, I expected a slow burn. Maybe a blog article, maybe a few snide comments. Instead, it caught like dry brush. By Monday morning, her name wasn't trending for glamour anymore. It was trending under words like setup, fraud, cruelty. The outlets had eaten the story alive. Screenshots of her laughing about 2 beats of tension before rejecting me circulated on Twitter. Clips of her voice notes rehearsing her lines went viral. And the kicker? The spreadsheet Liv had found, the one where Kara had written, if engaged by spring, add to insurance by summer. That was the nail. The public loves drama, but what it loves even more is a villain revealed. The influencer blogs called it the ultimate betrayal arc. Reddit threads titled "She Humiliated a Marine for Clout" hit the front page. Even people who normally spit on service were in the comments saying, "This isn't about the uniform. This is about humanity. Who does this?" Her sponsors fled like rats leaving a burning ship. The skincare brand announced no tolerance for orchestrated cruelty. Her podcast invite vanished. Even the gym where she filmed half her workout content banned her, citing disruption. Kara tried to clap back. She posted a teary-eyed Notes app apology on Instagram, comments turned off, claiming she had been manipulated into staging the rooftop and felt pressured by expectations. But the internet wasn't buying it. Screenshots don't lie. Her texts planning angles, captions, hashtags, proof stacked higher than her excuses. The local paper ran the headline, "Public Proposal Gone Viral with Scripted Humiliation." They didn't name me beyond a Marine gunnery sergeant stationed locally. That detail, the protection of my name, hit me harder than anything. For the first time since New Year's, I wasn't the story. She was. And I stayed silent. That was the real power. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I didn't explain. I just kept showing up to Ruck and Rebuild, kept leading my Marines, kept putting one boot in front of the other. But silence speaks. The Saturday after the story broke, twice as many people showed up at Kings Ridge. 40, maybe 50, faces I didn't know mixed with the usual crew. A couple wore shirts with memes about the rooftop, ironically repurposed into jokes against Kara. Someone had scrawled "We carry weight" on the back of their hoodie with Sharpie. I stood at the trailhead, scanning the crowd, and realized what had happened. My humiliation had mutated into something else entirely. A banner. A cause. People weren't just rucking to sweat. They were rucking to be part of a story that said, "You can't keep a good man down." Halfway up the ridge, Brennan jogged to my side. "Gunny," he said between breaths, "saw your name on Reddit. You're a legend, man." I shook my head. Legends are dead. I'm just climbing a hill. But inside I felt it, not pride exactly. More like reclamation. They weren't laughing at me anymore. They were following. Meanwhile, Kara's life disintegrated. Liv sent me screenshots of her texts, frantic and desperate. "I'm being cancelled. Everyone turned on me. Please, Mason, just say something to make it stop." I didn't reply. The last message she sent before I blocked her was 3 words, "You ruined me." The irony nearly knocked me flat. She had ruined herself. I just turned on the light. That week, Elliot was picked up by PD on fraud charges connected to the Tate athletics scheme. The detective, Ramos, called me personally. "He won't do serious time unless we connect Kara, but we've got enough to squeeze him." "He's rattled." "Good," I said. But here's the twist, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. Like a field after the fire has burned through, ugly but ready for something new to grow. The rooftop was no longer the center of my story. It was the spark that lit the fire Kara thought she'd control. But she forgot one thing: Marines don't burn easy. That night, I got a DM from the Stolen Valor Patrol admin, the guy who once circled my ribbons. "Respect, Gunny. You handled this with more discipline than I would've." Funny how fast enemies become quiet allies when truth is undeniable. By month's end, Kara had disappeared offline. No posts. No streams. No captions. Just gone. And in her place, a movement she accidentally created. Not about me, not about Marines, but about carrying weight uphill when the world laughs at you. Her attempt at content had become my redemption arc. And she never saw it coming. Rebuilding doesn't start with glory. It starts with routine. You don't notice the muscles until months later. At first it's just soreness. After the exposure, when Kara's empire imploded, I half expected to feel victorious, like some Hollywood final scene where the bad guy gets carried off in cuffs while the hero walks into a sunset. But the reality was quieter. I woke up, made my rack, shaved, and checked my gear like always. Nothing cinematic about it. But in that quiet, something had shifted. The humiliation wasn't sitting on my chest anymore. It was behind me, strapped to a sled, fueling each step forward. Ruck and Rebuild exploded. What started with 17 people was suddenly 50, then 60. By late spring, we had over 100 showing up at Kings Ridge before dawn. Veterans, kids, moms, even a few civilians who just wanted to sweat with a group that wouldn't mock them for gasping on the hill. One Saturday, a kid no older than 15 showed up wearing Converse so thin you could see his toes through the fabric. I pulled him aside. "Son, those shoes won't last 5 minutes up there." He shrugged. "It's all I got." I dug in the back of my truck, pulled out a pair of old boots I'd been meaning to donate. "What size?" He tried them on. Perfect fit. His smile looked foreign on his face, like it hadn't been there in years. He fell into line, boots thumping the dirt like he'd always belonged. That was the first time I realized Ruck and Rebuild wasn't just about me clawing back dignity. It was about building something bigger than any of us. The local paper ran another piece, this one front page. Headline, "Carrying Weight Together." A photo of 50 headlamps bobbing up the ridge in the dark. They quoted me once, "You can't always control the load, but you can choose how you carry it." I didn't remember saying it, but it sounded true enough. Then came the email from HQ. Commendation for exemplary community leadership and initiative. Signed by a colonel whose hand I'd only ever seen from salutes at formations. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kara had tried to humiliate me on camera, and now my silence had turned into a medal I hadn't asked for. But the internet doesn't stop watching. A month later, some genius spliced the Rooftop clip with footage from the newspaper's Ridge story. The video started with me kneeling in dress blues, Kara laughing. Then it cut to me at the trailhead, calling pace for 70 people climbing through fog. The caption, "Sometimes rejection is redirection." That video hit harder than the original Humiliation. Millions of views, but this time the comments weren't knives. He didn't fold. He built. Gunny take carrying more than rucks. This is how you answer betrayal, with leadership. I stayed silent. No statements. No interviews. The narrative rewrote itself without me saying a word. Eves cornered me one night after duty. "Gunny, you realize you're running a movement, right?" I laughed. "I'm running hills. People follow." "That's what movements are," he said. One person walking with weight, others falling in. He wasn't wrong. By summer we had spin-offs. A group in Texas called themselves Ruck Rebuild South. A Navy vet in Oregon started Carry Together. They messaged me photos, groups of strangers marching in the dark, carrying packs heavy with plates and ghosts. I never asked for any of it. But there it was. Meanwhile, Kara tried one last gasp. Liv sent me a screenshot. Kara had pitched herself to a podcast, calling herself a survivor of internet bullying, and blaming Elliot for everything. The producer's reply was savage. Nobody wants the villain's redemption arc when the hero already won. Hero. That word stuck in my throat like glass. I didn't feel like one. Heroes are statues and folded flags. I was just a Marine who'd been humiliated and refused to stay down. But maybe, in a world where everyone records everything, refusing to stay down is enough. Then came Brennan. The quiet private with new shoes. One Saturday after Ruck, he pulled me aside. "Gunny, I gotta tell you something." I nodded, bracing. "My mom kicked her boyfriend out. Cops got involved. But I didn't let him touch my accounts. Froze everything like you said. I've still got money. I've still got my name." He swallowed hard. "If I hadn't heard you say it, I think I'd be broke right now." I clapped his shoulder. Didn't say much. Marines don't need speeches. But inside I felt it. The chain reaction. My humiliation turned into his prevention. Funny thing about scars. Sometimes they become maps for other people. The internet crowned me a folk hero, but my real victories were quieter. A kid in real boots. A private with his money safe. A sergeant with a bad knee who said he hadn't laughed in months until he joined us. The Rooftop was still out there, archived forever, but it had become the first frame of a longer video. And for the first time I was okay with that. Because the clip didn't end with me on one knee. Not anymore. It ended with me at the top of King's Ridge, headlamp cutting fog, 70 people at my back. And Kara? She became the footnote. New Year's Eve came around again faster than I thought it would. 1 year since the Rooftop. 1 year since I stood in dress blues, ring box in hand, and got turned into a meme. This time I wasn't in a rooftop bar. I was at the trailhead of King's Ridge, boots laced, ruck strapped, thermos in hand. The group had grown beyond recognition. Over 100 people lined up in the cold, headlamps glowing like a constellation pressed against the earth. Veterans. Civilians. Kids. Strangers who'd found me online and flown in just to climb the ridge with us. I stood at the front, scanning the line, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete calm. "Gunny," Ruiz called, grinning like a kid with a secret. "Want to give a speech? You know, for the anniversary?" I shook my head. "We don't do speeches. We do miles." Laughter rippled. Boots shifted. And then we stepped off into the dark. Halfway up the ridge, the city below us started launching fireworks. Bursts of color lit the horizon. A year ago, I'd watched fireworks while my life burned. Now, each explosion felt like punctuation. A reminder that endings aren't always funerals. Sometimes they're commas. At the summit, I poured bad coffee into the same ugly cup I'd been carrying since the beginning. Dana raised his paper one. "To the year that didn't kill us," he said. We drank. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it, but when I checked, my chest tightened. "Care." One last text. "I'm sorry. I lost everything. Please, Mason. Just talk to me. For old time's sake." I stared at the words, fireworks cracking in the distance, the glow of headlamps circling me like a shield. For a second, I remembered her smile before all of this, remembered her handwriting on letters that smelled like her perfume, remembered thinking she was my anchor. But anchors can drown you just as easily as they can hold you steady. I deleted the text. Blocked her number. Let the silence be my answer. That was my closure. Not a dramatic confrontation. Not revenge shouted into her face. Just absence. Refusal to give her any more of me. Because she hadn't ruined me. She'd revealed me. And Elliot? He was facing fraud charges, squirming under subpoenas, his civic repoed, his accounts frozen. Ramos, the detective, sent me an update. Case is progressing. Don't expect headlines, but the walls are closing in. Good enough. Justice doesn't need to be loud to be real. As for me, I was still in the core. Still teaching kids how to swap barrels in the dark, still running drills, still making lists. And outside of that, I had a movement I never asked for but couldn't imagine letting go. Sometimes I get messages from strangers. Veterans, single moms, kids. They send me photos of themselves climbing trails with packs full of books, water jugs, bricks, whatever weight they can find. They tag it #Ruck Rebuild. And I never respond. Not because I don't care, but because it's not about me. It's about them. That's the lesson Kara never learned. It was never about content. It was about connection. As midnight struck, the group broke into cheers, fireworks painting the sky. Tavian's little brother shouted, "Gunny, you're trending again." I laughed first this time. And the sound wasn't bitter. It wasn't defensive. It was clean. Because if the world wanted to keep telling my story, fine. At least now it was the right one. The rooftop clip will always be out there. It's the internet. It never dies. But so is the ridge. So is the line of people with weight on their backs climbing uphill together. And if you put those two clips side by side, the humiliation and the rebuild, you'll see the truth. I didn't lose on that rooftop. I got free. Free of Kara. Free of Elliot. Free of the idea that my worth hinged on someone else saying yes. I walked down the ridge with my unit of misfits, boots crunching frost, headlamp beams bouncing like heartbeats. And I knew, this was my life now. Not broken. Not bitter. Rebuilt. And that's the kind of story you can't script. A year after the second New Year's on King's Ridge, the movement wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to whoever strapped weight on their back and decided they weren't carrying it alone. Ruck Rebuild chapters had sprouted in 5 states. Texas, Oregon, Ohio, Florida, and one in New York led by a retired Army medic who emailed me once, "I don't talk about my ghosts. But I carry them. Thank you for giving me a place to walk." The local news did a segment titled, "From Viral Meme to National Mission." They tried to get me on camera. I declined. Let the footage of strangers walking in dawn fog be the story. My face had been used enough. Kara's name, meanwhile, had become a cautionary tale. Influencer gossip channels mention her the way old Marines talk about bad chow halls. Remember that mess? Glad it's gone. Elliot pled down on fraud charges, spent a year on probation, vanished into obscurity. Kara tried one last rebrand but it fizzled. No followers left to clap. One morning I stopped at a diner after Ruck. A waitress poured coffee into the ugliest cup I still carried. She glanced at the boots stacked by the door, the Rucks leaning against chairs, the people laughing like they hadn't been strangers an hour earlier. "You run this group?" she asked. "Sort of," I said. She smiled. "You know you gave half the town something to belong to, right?" I shrugged. All I did was start walking. But maybe that's all leadership is. Walking first, letting others decide if they'll follow. As I sipped my coffee, I thought back to the rooftop. The lights, the laughter, the sting of betrayal that felt like the end of the world. And I realized something. Endings are overrated. What looks like collapse might just be demolition. And demolition clears ground for something stronger. So if you're reading this wondering if you'll survive the hit, you will. You don't rebuild overnight. You rebuild 1 mile, 1 step, 1 pound of weight at a time. And when you reach the top of your ridge, you'll look back and laugh. Not because the pain didn't matter, but because it shaped you. That's my closure. That's my revenge. Not Kara's downfall. My rebuild. And the story's still being written.